Let me show you how I made these very bright camera lights, which are much brighter than LED lights and will give you a big evenly spread beam of light. I will take you through easy to follow step-by-step instructions. To make the reflectors, start with some thin shiny metal which is thin enough to bend easily. Shiny aluminium would be good for this. I used this 6-foot long reflector from a fluorescent strip light from an old sunbed. But if you have to buy some sheet metal, it's easy to find and you won't need much. If you do find some reflectors like this, cut 2 lengths 20 centimeters long, or from sheet metal cut 2 pieces 20 centimeters by 14 centimeters. On both pieces measure up 25 millimeters and measure across to the center and mark these points. Then measure up 5 centimeters and draw a line squarely across. Use a water-based marker pen for all the marks whilst making this, then they can be washed off later. Cut a hole 24 millimeters diameter at each of these points. I used a hole saw for this. Cut along the straight line to the start of the center panel and fold these bits down flat, or on sheet metal cut 5 centimeters in from each side. At the bottom of each piece measure up 25 millimeters and measure in from each side 35 millimeters and mark these points. Drill a 3.5 millimeter hole at each of these points. These will be for pot rivets. You can drill larger holes and use small bolts if you want here. Now fold down, or if using sheet metal, fold up the 2 sides, so they are 28 millimeters up at each of these points. I found this to be the best angle for a wide, even light. Fold up the bottom panels and cut off any excess metal off the sides of the bottom panels here. Turn them over and fold up the rear corners of the bottom panels behind the side panels. This will stop light blinding you through the gaps that would otherwise be there. Get some aluminium flat bar 40mm by 3mm and cut 2 lengths 20 centimeters long and 1 piece 35 centimeters long. On the 2 short lengths measure in 6 centimeters from one end and mark a line squarely across. On the long piece measure in 15 centimeters from one end and mark a line squarely across. Fold each piece squarely on the lines marked to 90 degrees in a bench vise. On the short brackets mark a line down the center of the longest side. Place one of the reflectors on top of the center line marked and mark the center of the holes drilled onto the center line. Mark that reflector and that bracket with an A so they don't get mixed up later. Turn the other short bracket around the other way and do the same to that reflector and that bracket and mark these with a B. The marks on the brackets should look like this. On the centre marks cut a 20mm diameter hole. I used a hole saw for this, and on the other points drill 3.5mm holes. And they should look like this after that. On the short sides of the short brackets measure up 30mm and measure across to the centre and mark those points. You will need to use a bolt here, either 6mm or 8mm would do. Drill a hole the same size as the bolt you use. I had a spare 8mm bolt which I used here. On the longer side of the large bracket measure 25mm from the end and measure across to the centre and mark these points. Drill the same size hole you used before for the bolt here. On your camera, measure where your tripod mounting is from the left at the back of the camera. On the shorter side of the large bracket, measure that distance plus 40mm from the corner and measure across to the centre and mark those points. Then drill a 6mm hole there. Next, clean all the pieces of metal with methylated spirits, especially the reflectors. It will make them clean and more reflective. Get two 12-volt car halogen headlamp bulbs with 2 pins which are 55 watts each. Sandwich a bulb between reflector A and bracket A. Take care not to touch the glass of the bulb or it will fail when turned on. If you do, wipe it over with methylated spirits. Put 3mm pot rivets through the small holes to fix it all together. Then do the same to reflector B and bracket B. Lay out the 2 lights with the large bracket like this and place the bolt through the 3 brackets and do up the bolt. Using some wire, I used 2-core mains cable. Cut 4 lengths of individual wires 20 centimeters long. Strip all the ends and crimp a blue female spade connector on one end of each wire like this. Connect 1 blue and 1 brown wire to each light bulb. Then get a block connector and put both blue wires into one connection and both brown wires into the other connection and tie wrap the wires to the bracket. Now decide how you will power the lights. You can use a 12-volt rechargeable drill battery. This gives you about 10 minutes of use before needing to be charged. A small 12-volt battery like this one, which will give you about 1 hour of use before needing to be charged. A small car battery, this one will give you 4 hours of use before needing to be charged. Or you could plug it into the cigarette lighter socket of your vehicle. You now need a length of 2-core cable. How long depends on how you power the lights. You can put these batteries in a rucksack or shoulder bag, so you will only need 1.8 meters of cable for those. But if connecting to your vehicle's cigarette lighter socket or using a small car battery and placing it on the ground whilst filming the surrounding area, you will need a long cable. Cut the length of cable you need and strip the ends of the wires. Connect the blue wire into the block connector opposite the other blue wires and connect the brown wire opposite the other brown wires. Tape the cable to the bottom of the bracket. This also makes a nice comfortable handle to hold the lights with. Connect the other end of the cable to the battery by stripping the ends of the wires and crimping female spade connectors or small crocodile clips onto them. Or if using your vehicle's cigarette lighter socket, connect the wires to a cigarette lighter plug. The last thing to do is to fix your camera to the bracket using a camera retaining screw, which can be bought at camera shops. You will probably need to add a few washers as a spacer, as they are quite long.